Have you ever loved something so much that you just want to make it happen every day? Me neither. This is a podcast a day. One ring to rule them all. Young hobbit Frodo Baggins, after inheriting a mysterious ring from his uncle Bilbo, must leave his home in order to keep it from falling into the hands of its evil creator. Along the way, a fellowship is formed to protect the ring bearer and make sure that the ring arrives at its final destination, Mount Doom, the only place where it can be destroyed. Ladies and gentlemen, another day, another pod, another film, and I'm here sitting down bravely to tell you that I fucking hate Lord of the Rings. I'm leaving a pause here because I'm assuming people are booing or like throwing tomatoes, which would be pointless because I'm nowhere near you. This is in the past, even if it was in somehow live. It's not. I said somehow like it's like a far-fetched sort of, sci-fi idea. Live is not something that's weird, but if I was live, it wouldn't. I'm not in the same room. You're just spotting yourself. You got to clean it up. I don't like it. I'm one of those guys. I'm that guy. The guy who doesn't like Lord of the Rings. You probably have met one, maybe when working a random retail job somewhere, and you quickly kept him at arm's distance. But we exist. We live on this plane, on this earth, and we have been silenced. We've been silenced for long enough. People don't want to hear us. We're left screaming in a void, and anytime you do speak out, you are. Have I been silent with my opinion on Lord of the Rings, or have I been silenced, as Oprah Winfrey once said? That was on the topic of Meghan Markle and the royal family. This is maybe something a little bit different lane, but Lord of the Rings, and I think that's an apt intro for today's episode of Podcast Today. For the film, we're going to do all three. Lord of the Rings. Now, directed by Peter Jackson, came out in 2001. What I would like to say is opinions, especially on films, they're one of these things. It's kind of like a joke. If you tell me something, a really funny joke, and on all levels, it's a well-crafted joke. It's got a great punchline. The setup's amazing. Your comedic timing is perfect. And you tell me this joke, and I look at you with the straightest of faces in the world, and you then explain to me the joke. How many times have you explained the joke to someone, and then they died of laughter? Only a psychopath would do that, and that is what I am not. No, but it's happened a lot. I did reactions to these films, I think a few years ago, and they became my most viewed things that I'd done ever, because Lord of the Rings, people love it, but people naturally, when they see reactions, people watching those films for the first time, they want to see you coming into it not knowing anything about it, or maybe being a bit skeptical, and by the end, loving it and being like, oh my god, I love this thing, it's so amazing, I get Peter Jackson's a fucking genius, and they want to kind of basically get to rewatch those films the first time through someone else's eyes. I get it, right? I watched them. I was like, I'll probably hate these, but there's views in this. Watched them, was like, yeah, still don't like this. I didn't really give my time. And then just floods of people telling me, you don't get it, you didn't understand it, his brain is so small, he couldn't open his mind. And it's like, those things could be true in some ways, but not true enough to make me, if I just opened my mind more, my opinion would change from a half a star, which is what I've given it, to 5 stars. That's a crazy jump. Maybe I'd go up a half star. It's just one of those things. Like, whether you get it or you don't, some people just don't really like fantasy. And it's not like I love Game of Thrones and the House of Dragon series, and I love these other things that are like of a similar ilk. I just don't care. And I just never liked Lord of the Rings. I'm almost surprised that it is so popular, because it is like a genre which isn't. A lot of people are like, that's lame, that's nerd shit, that's loser. Well, clearly not, because the most popular films in the world are like fantasy films or like superhero films, I guess. So like, it's kind of weird when you think about it, because people are getting bullied for this, and it's not like, I don't feel like more people probably within like such a short period of time, 10, 20 years, all of a sudden, like, people just changed their minds. Like, clearly people must have always liked this, and it was suppressed. People had a suppressed love for just like superhero films and fantasy, nerd type shit. And for whatever reason, that was like not the thing at the time. And yeah, I watched this a couple years ago, and it's just like, let me tell you, right? If it's going to be a genre you're not into, I think a couple things are going to need to be, you know, present for you to really get on board. I think if it's a genre you're always not into, it's got to be digestible. The film is very long. That's not going to help the case when you're trying to get into something you don't like already from the offset, and it's long. Um, it didn't feel particularly I mean, it came out in 2000. People go on about how beautiful it is, how great it looks. And I don't know, maybe it's just the spoiled nature of being born in a certain time period where films have always looked a certain way. It's harder sometimes. I feel like people don't talk about that enough. It's like everyone's just like, people who really like films, right? Really like movies like that. They have a letterboxd account. I understand I have one, but you know, I logged 7 films last year. I'm not like a hardcore, right? Not yet, right? But these people, it's like, there must be people who are the same, because so many people, they have no problem watching a film that came out in the 60s and 70s and watching that film that came out that long ago and being like, this is a masterpiece. I feel like surely it's a more common thing, right? If you're born after a certain time and films have always looked at least a certain way to you and sounded a certain way and didn't have those weird like transatlantic accents type things, or like the humor maybe has always been dialed in a certain way, on the effects or whatever it is, the visuals, right? More people just surely can't be saying it. Just like simply like, it's difficult for me to watch a film that is considered a classic that came out in like the 70s or something, kind of pre-80s, and be like, wow, that was amazing. That is my new favorite thing. That was true. I guess because I really like films, I really like movies and stuff, but I guess I just don't like it in that kind of way where I can do that. And this came out in 2001. I'm just watching it like, it just doesn't feel anything special to me. Even if things after this have been, it's like, you know what it is? It's like, I really like Dune, and I don't particularly love, well, maybe movies like this or with this kind of vernacular and like the way they speak and stuff. You could argue it's a bit thespian, right, or whatever. I really like Dune, right? And but I can understand it's like, you know, it's a weird fucking film, and it's probably an even weirder book from what I've heard, right? And some weird shit happens and it's pretty deep, and maybe it moves kind of slow and they're really slowly setting things up, and maybe there's not a lot of dialogue at times, right? Trying to get someone who's like 14 into Dune, I'm not saying it's impossible, probably a bunch of 14-year-olds who like to, right? But who like loves like The Force Awakens, like all these Star Wars films that Star Wars diehards hate, right? But all these newer like Disney, you know, Star Wars stuff, and trying to explain to them, no, you gotta like Dune though. You do realize all this stuff you like in Star Wars is like derived, or whatever the right word is, from Dune. Like Dune made it big first, or whatever. They had like the Force basically with the voice or whatever, and they had these themes and those themes. Tatooine's very similar to this thing with the suns or the moons or whatever, right? Trying to explain it to them, it's like everything is from your own perspective. Telling them, well, Dune was first and Dune did it like this, and this is better, and the source material, whatever, right? The thing they was first exposed to was Star Wars. It doesn't. You could tell them this happened before and this thing 10 years prior. It doesn't really matter to them. So I'm sitting here watching Lord of the Rings, and you can tell me, but you got to understand, it was 2000, so that shot in the sky, it wasn't drones, it was all helicopters, and they went out in New Zealand. It was filmed these crazy. It looks masterful. You got to understand, someone who's watching it maybe for the first time is like like early 20s at the time when I saw it, whatever, right? You're like, it's just not giving anything to me, which I'm like, damn. And maybe I don't have enough in me where I can take myself out of my body and put myself in the shoes of, no, think about when this came out. Because I had a similar problem with like Star Wars. Like, you're watching it and you're like, it looks like, you know, 2D animation, or like ship on a stick moving across the screen. No, but at the time that took huge feats, and I respect it on a level when I sit down and watch like a corridor crew video, you know, they do like the CGI breakdowns and stuff, and I watch it and I go, oh god, that took some real thought when they talk about the crazy convoluted ways that to get certain shots, which now you just do like that, right? But it doesn't mean that watching it in a film sense, on a creative level, and if it's going to make me feel something. And that's the thing. I watch this, and it's not like I watch it and I come away from it being like that. Well, film was ugly with awful dialogue, a terrible pacing. The storyline was crap. The character arcs were unearned and awful. And like, it's not like I've ever said Lord of the Rings is just bad at what it's doing. It's just that I don't connect with it on any way. I don't care about any of the characters. I don't really care about the story. It really is that simple, and that's fine. But like, it's just like it's hard to say that sometimes the people who love these things so deeply. I mean, let's go through the sort of typical things we usually do, which is we'll go through the director, we'll look at his other films, and honestly, has Peter Jackson? Before I actually look, has Peter Jackson done other films? Because I only really know him. He's got a crazy name that sounds like complete fiction. His name sounds like he'd be like the main character in one of these types of stories. Maybe not a Lord of the Rings story, but he sounds like he would be like. I'm literally just saying this because of Percy Jackson, right? But you know what I mean. It just sounds like a name. Um, but yeah, when I think Percy Jackson, sorry, I just did it. Peter Jackson. I only know him from these films. And did Peter Jackson write the books, or is that someone? I don't know. Did he direct the films and write the books? That seems a bit far fetched. I don't know. Let's see if he did do anything else. He did the Hobbit films, which probably I remember being more like on TV more than Lord of the Rings and seeing those first. Because when I used to think of Lord of the Rings before I even saw the films, my mind would immediately go to what's your name, mate? I'm going to have to click it so I can see the cast. Martin Freeman. Is that if you told me Lord of the Rings, my mind would go to Martin Freeman. So when I watched it for the first time, and it was not, it was Elijah. What is it? What is his name? Elijah Wood. Right, and it was him. Then I was listening to it. Also, I said this last time. I need to make a pie chart of like what I rate in a film. I feel like the cast is like something I really connect to, and like obviously they're all amazing actors in the, well, not all of them, I don't know how high level of some of them are, but there's a great actor in the film, but none of them are like my favourites. Like if I looked at Lord of the, like I quite like Martin Freeman. I'd probably like The Hobbit just a little bit more than Lord of the Rings, simply because I know people don't really like The Hobbit, so it's probably technically worse, but just simply because I'd at least have a connection point to something there. There'd be something tethering me down to the film, whereas these ones don't have that for me. So he did a King Kong film, 2005. Never really seen any of them films. I think there's a couple documentaries. The Lovely Bones. I remember this was pretty critically acclaimed, right? That like nominated. Who was the cast? If I see the cast, I probably remember who was nominated. Yeah, Saoirse Ronan's in this. I think she was nominated as like, was she a child in that? I mean, it came out in 2009, so she was at least what, 15 years this younger. And then a bunch of other films. I don't really know any of these at all. Um, it's like 50% Lord of the Rings and then the Hobbit films. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think I did technically see all three. They do blur all into one for me. If I had to say a favorite, I couldn't even tell you. I'd probably just say the first one. Because at least there's like I've seen gifs before. I've seen in I've heard the iconic lines or whatever, and I recognize these things. It's like a little like, oh well, there's that, a little noticing thing. But now like this is gonna be the largest like gap between my rating and a fan rating we've done so far, because mine is a half a star. That's just my interest in it. Maybe now if I was gonna watch this film, I'd be a little bit more generous. I'd give it like 2.5, because I'd be weighing up a little bit of like, I try and think about this. How much of this is like, how much do I like it? How much of it should I give a rating on? If it was technically well done, if it was made or whatever. But it's just of your own personal enjoyment, you know what I mean? And the average rating's at 4.4, which is like basically as good as you're getting, really. Especially when you've got over 40,000 votes. Like a lot of these films might have higher, like 4.7 or something, but it has like 600, and I feel like it's harder the more you go up. I mean, if we look at some of the reviews here, obviously they're all like 5 stars basically, the most popular ones. I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king. That's clearly a quote and a bunch of crying emojis. God, all of the reviews, because this is the thing, everyone acknowledges that this is like an amazing film and a lot of people's favorite films. So there is no actual like proper reviews, because who's actually going to leave a proper review for Lord of the Rings, especially if you're reviewing it or logging it within the last like 5 years? Like, it didn't just come out, and Letterboxd probably came out way after 2001. So like everyone who was reviewing the film, it came out ages ago and was already considered a masterpiece and won Oscars or whatever. So like, it's most of these reviews aren't reviews, they're more just like quotes or like meme related things or less like funny kind of lines. And I don't know what I'm going to review, because I have to think of a review, but this is kind of like where the idea stemmed from to recommend films that I don't like, because this is where the whole having bad taste came from, or whatever, because that's what I've been told multiple times. So that's why I've been doing it, kind of because of Lord of the Rings. Actually, my nose is kind of running right now, and I'm really surprised because when my nose runs, it runs fast. It's Olympic speed level. It's fucking, it's a faucet, full blast. It is bad, and somehow I've managed to find a window where that's the first time I've had to like sniff. Yeah, that's the right word. I don't know why that felt wrong. And I'm just grateful to that, and I just want to push the boundaries of when that's going to start running, because once it starts, it will not stop. It will not stop. In terms of review there, which I need to log, Letterboxd should be linked somewhere. I need to actually do that. I'm gonna review it something like the abuse I've received for not liking this film is enough to give it a half a star in itself. Something along those lines. I'll tighten up a little bit. Go check the Letterboxd to see what the final one was. But something like that, I'll give it as a review, because honestly, just like walking into a scenario being like, don't like Lord of the Rings, it's like, oh, people naturally just go to say, oh, he's stupid, uncultured. Oh, he didn't. It's kind of like walking into a place and you're like, oh, I don't really like this dish that your mom has made for you ever since you was a kid, and then in their head they're thinking, right, fucking uncultured swine. Well, that's fine, but you haven't had my mom's spag bowl, or whatever spaghetti bolognese, for the more Tory people out there. But you haven't had my mum's. I literally can't think of a single meal. That's how much I can't think on my feet, and that's not great when you're doing a podcast. But yeah, I don't know if it's even worth doing all three of these films now I think about it, because it's all one, like, honestly, chore in my brain. Even thinking about it is honestly a chore for me. But like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, it would probably be harder for people to hear that or people don't care, but if I like loved, what's it called? Game of Thrones or something. But I don't think there's anything else in the same warehouse that I love, and it's just like, this is the one that I just think they execute poorly. Then I would get it. That'd be even harder take. But yeah, like, there's shit which you think's awful probably, which I like way more than this. I would rather watch. I'd rather watch Infinity War. Oh my god, he said he preferred the Marvel film to Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson that got Oscars. Marvel can barely get Oscars in costume or CGI. I don't give a fuck, mate. I don't give a fuck. I'm I'm gonna say it loud and proud. I don't like Lord of the Rings, and I don't want to, when I felt really connected in that Barbie film when they have Kingsley Benadir's Ken talking about the Godfather and explaining it shot by shot. I can't think of anything worse than having to do that with something like Lord of the Rings, sitting there for like 3 hours, and someone explaining to me how they filmed every shot and why it's amazing, and this disappointment in their eyes and the life leaving their eyes as we get to the end of the runtime and they realize this actually hasn't won me over. And I told them it wouldn't, but they were so persistent and they were sure if I watched it with them, I would soon appreciate. And then sort of just as they distance me and I'm slowly cut out of their lives. But yeah, today's was Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, 2001. It has a 0.5 star out of 5, and I'm not changing that. I don't know what film we're doing next. Easily another film in a similar kind of realm that I could do. Avatar. I'm not talking of the Last Airbender variety. I'm talking about the big blue people who have sex with their hair. It's not really sex, but it's anyway. That honestly could be on the cards. The first one I haven't seen, Way of Water yet, or ever. But yeah, this is Pod a Day. Do a podcast every single day. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.